चला के देखूं क्या? Start, okay. Hello learners, welcome to this second session of History of Journalism and Mass Communication, and I take you again through this fascinating history of discovering media and mass communication. So in this session we're going to cover the telegraph and how it came into being, what all effects did it have on the society, on the modern world in general, the telephone, radio, history of Indian radio, that is what we will particularly focus on, and then the coming up of commercial radio and community radio, and how community radio has gauged a more important, more significant role in the country. We will also look at television, cinema, and in cinema we will look at the evolution of cinema, the talkie films, the color films, the 2D, 3D and the 4D films, and of course the social media and the internet. So let us begin with the telegraph first. Evolution of all things, communication included, involves the desire to perform various tasks more efficiently and more quickly, more effectively. Telegraph somehow was emanating from that feeling. So an Englishman, William Watson, had devised a way to send messages via telegraph way back in 1747. The logistics of telegraphic communication involved the sending of electrostatically generated signals through a wire. The system involved three main components: a battery to supply the electricity, a key used to complete or break the circuit, and an electromagnet at the receiving end which consisted of a wire that pulled on a piece of metal when electricity passed through it. The revolution of the telegraph allowed for instant communication across long distances, something that had previously been completely unheard of. The technology was particularly useful during the wartime to transmit pertinent information from one bunker to the other. The first telegraph stations were set up along railroads as the necessary poles were already erected there, so there wasn't any need to erect any fresh poles for telegraphic services. The telegraph was also popular amongst the Victorian sect. Those belonging to the upper class of the society used the telegraph for personal communications, but those who belonged to the lower economic status were excluded from technology due to the cost involved in sending a telegraph. So again, the divide of haves and have-nots played a pertinent role in development of media throughout the world history. So the next thing was telephone. Now this was an instrument that covers voice and other sound signals to a form that can be transmitted electronically to remote locations, and that receives and reconverts those waves into sound signals by the means of an electronic device. The word telephone is derived from the Greek word tele, which means afar or far off, and phone means voice or sound. So any sound coming from far off is what telephone stands for. Together it means a distant voice. And then of course telephone has become one of the best ways to communicate in the modern world. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell was busy realizing a dream that he hoped would totally revolutionize the communication of the world. Given our reliance on telephones today, it is surprising to know that Bell's invention was initially quite unpopular. In today's times, nobody can think that telephones or mobile phones for that matter could be one unpopular device. But during those times, telegraph was more popular than telephones. The telephone did not generate so much of an excitement as the telegraph did after a few decades of it. And the reason could have been high costing factors. The telegraph had cornered the long distance contact market, which was something which was completely unheard of till date. The lack of popularity may also be attributed to the high cost of telephone service. So those were the reasons, despite being an amazing, a wonderful device to connect to people, telephone did not become as popular initially as telegraph did. Now let us look at radio. Radio owes its development to two other So we were talking of the color films. Kisan Kanya, which was released in 1937, was a first Hindi feature film in color, and it was directed by Moti B. Gidwani and produced by Ardeshir Irani of Imperial Pictures. Now this was based on a novel by Saadat Hasan Manto, and it is largely remembered by the Indian public on account of being India's first indigenously made color film. Although the trend of colored films started very late, much after Kisan Kanya was made. Now let us talk about the 2D and 3D films. 2D films consisted of sound and moving visuals, although they lacked depth. The evolution of technology played a part in upgradation of the 2D films into 3D films. A picture that has or appears to have height, depth as well as width is the three-dimensional film or a 3D film. A picture that has height and width but no depth is a 2D film. 3D films, or which are also called stereoscopic films, is a motion picture that enhances the illusion of depth perception. Derived from stereoscopic photography.